I looked at 1963, the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And during this time, there was a social influence was going on. It says that the assassination of JFK was a turning point in American history. With the impact on the nation's psyche, this era was characterized by a culture shift where, in this case, whiskey and bourbon were part of the American identity. So there was need to almost like unifying around something American. The response to it was profound. There was the Warren Commission to enhance more attention towards the Secret Service and more protective procedures. Welcome to Beyond Cocktails, a podcast where curiosity meets conversation, all while sipping on bourbon and whiskey. Join me as I delve into a wide range of topics, from exploring diverse cultures and education to uncovering the experiences of African American men and women. We'll dive into the world of women's sports, U.S. history, and more, all with a glass of fine spirits in hand. Beyond Cocktails, the perfect blend of knowledge and enjoyment. So, tune in and journey with me beyond the glass. All right, welcome to Sip and Share. I'm Tasha, your host, and this is Beyond Cocktails. This is the part of the show where I start each episode by introducing the bourbon or the whiskey that I'll be sipping on throughout the show. Now, I'll give you some of my own tasting notes and some history and a little bit of fun facts where I have them. And I'll invite you, the listener, to share your own experiences through social media. And so let's see what we got today. I'm loving. First of all, I just want you to see this color in this. So if you notice what's different, and if you can look behind me here, the difference, there's some major difference in color. Well, this is the St. George Baller American Single Malt Whiskey. So today I'm going to be sipping on a nice whiskey throughout the show. The St. George Distillery out of Alameda, California, produces this American single malt. And what they've done is, besides there being a blend of barrels that were used to age this in, they finished this off in a Umeshu cask barrel. And Umeshu, for those who don't know, is a Yumi. It's a Japanese plum. And they use that plum to make wines or liqueurs and things of that sort. But this particular spirit was aged in a Umeshu cask. So it's going to give it a little sweetie fruitiness, on the nose. So we've gotten this beautiful, beautiful spirit here. Let's see if I got a little blurriness going on. But I was talking to a friend earlier and I said, this is me in a bottle. And he kind of laughed and he was like, you in a bottle? And I was like, yeah, everything about it. The malted barley process, basically they soak some barley, soak it until it starts to sprout a little bit. And once it starts to sprout, they will put it out to dry, put it in a kiln, and they'll stop the sprouting process, which allows for the enzymes to open up and interact with the yeast in that fermentation process. And then they distill it. But you can see this color, light color, and I love this whiskey. It's amazing. Let me just give it a taste. I'm telling you, a friend of mine brought this back because I couldn't find it in Georgia. And a friend was coming through California and on the drive back through, stopped over and brought me this bottle, which was a very pleasant surprise. And I've been sipping on this bottle throughout, trying not to actually sip it down. And just today, I got news that I was able to get some bottles here in Georgia. One of my local retailers reached out to their distributor and found out that they could get them some. So they got some bottles in, and I'm not telling you where it is if you're here in Atlanta, because I'm going to get my bottles first and then whatever's on the shelf. I did find out they only had 6 bottles though. So maybe on the next episode, I'll let you know where they are if you want them. But give this a try if you have it, if you're listening to me in the West Coast area or anywhere where you can find this St. George Ballers. This is absolutely delicious. welcome to Curiosity Corner. This is where I dive deep into some burning question or topic from a broad range of topics, from education to history to pop culture, anything, and just kind of get a chance to explore my curiosities and thought provoking ideas that I have around certain topics. So today was one of those moments when I'm in traffic and I'm at a stoplight, and just it dawned on me, because I kind of came up to breathe with the rest of the world, that I haven't really heard a whole lot about the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. So now, full disclosure, I don't watch a whole lot of television, and I definitely don't just turn on the news every day, every hour, or 3 times a day. But I do YouTube and have my Google feeds that come up, and I just haven't seen a whole lot. Now, you can send me comments in the post area, the comment area. Hit like and subscribe so that we can engage a little bit more. But send me some comments just in case I've missed it. But it appears to me that there hasn't been a whole lot of conversation around the idea that someone attempted to assassinate a former president of the United States. And I don't know if it's me, but I haven't heard a lot about the assassin. The FBI made some kind of revelation. Um, but as far as talk about the assassin, talk about what they found was the issue, how did he get there, it seems like it was very short lived. And we're less than 2 months from it. And I just thought there would be a lot more. So, my curiosity is, why isn't it there more talk or more conversation about it? Is it, on one hand, they're trying to put that out of people's minds because we're in a political climate now where we're getting ready to vote um, for the next president of the United States, and they just don't want to interrupt that process, which could be? Or is it that, as some would suspect or allege, it was bogus, it was um, planned, or was it not planned and it was an attempt, and the United States government doesn't want to reveal that there was some lack in the security detail for Donald Trump? That's the topic that I'm going to actually dive a little bit deeper into somewhat when we move to our next segment, which is History in a Glass. So don't forget, like, subscribe, leave me comments in the media post so that we can engage a little bit more on these topics and these curiosities. All right. And to that, I say, can't wait to see you in the next segment. All right, welcome to History in a Glass. This is where we journey through U.S. history. I wanted to piggyback on our curiosity corner this episode, and for a couple of reasons. I really did have this curious random thought as to how I haven't heard anything about the assassination attempt of Donald Trump, a couple of months ago or less than. And I definitely hadn't heard a whole lot about what happened, what they suspect happened, how did he get past security, blah, blah, blah. So I just wanted to explore that thought even more. So I went to look up former or previous assassination attempts on presidents. So I looked up different years of things that was going on in history. And of course, I was researching around bourbon and whiskey. So I was curious as to what happened. So I just want to give you a little bit of what I found out. And again, this is piggybacking off of my curious thought as to the fact that the country didn't seem to respond in a manner that it had in prior attempts of assassination. So let me just give you some, just a few from prior years. So we're going to go back to 1881, and this was the assassination attempt of James Garfield. Garfield was shot in 1881, July of 1881, and then he died shortly after, September of that same year. In response to his assassination, it influenced the passage of the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act of 1883, and which began the process of dismantling the patronage system and establishing a merit-based civil service. In 1901, there was the assassination attempt of William McKinley. And during this time, there was whiskey and prohibition movement was going on. So Garfield was 1881. And during this time, the production of whiskey had increased in Kentucky, and it was, pretty much solidified as an American spirit. But shortly after, in 1901, there's the assassination of William McKinley, and the Prohibition movement led to the 18th Amendment and the Volstead Act, 1920, which banned the production and the sales of alcohol. So then I looked at 1963, the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And during this time, there was a social influence was going on. And it says that the assassination of JFK was a turning point in American history with the impact on the nation's psyche. This era was characterized by a culture shift where, in this case, whiskey and bourbon were part of the American identity. So there was this there was need to almost like unifying, around something American. The response to it was profound. That there was the Warren Commission enhanced more attention towards the Secret Service and more protective procedures. Going back to the time of William McKinley in 1901, Theodore Roosevelt succeeded McKinley and became a strong advocate for law and order. And the Secret Service protective servicing of presidents was enhanced. So we have some response to it, definitely. And then I went to an assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan's life. And at that point, Reagan does not die, but he was definitely wounded. There was an overhaul of the Secret Service protocols because of the attempt, and that John Hinckley Jr. made his way to the president, and James Brady, Reagan's press secretary. And of course, after this attempt on Reagan's life and Brady definitely wounded, there was the Brady Handgun Violence Protection Act that was put in place. So there was some response to the assassination, and there was some response that the country provided by way of leadership in various areas. Various acts and commissions were brought in to respond back to that, regardless of what was going on. And this time, this is 2024, and there was an assassination attempt on a former president, still protected by the Secret Service. And it appears the Secret Service didn't get it right. We have protocols that were put in place in the early 1900s after McKinley's assassination. And then we come to John F. Kennedy, and those protocols were even more intense and enhanced. We get to Reagan, and we got some laws that were put in place and passed. We get down to 2024, and we have Donald Trump. And unless there's something going on that I haven't heard about, we get nothing. We get no response. There's no talk of some type of legislation or enhancement to the Secret Service. I know someone got fired. I think there was the head of the Secret Service was fired, or Anyways, let me just take a sip because I'm actually just baffled as to what's going on with our country and our response to violence. It seems like this was a, laissez-faire. What will be, will be. All right. History in a glass. Till next time. All right. Welcome to Quick Sip Hot Topics. I am Tasha, and I am sipping on Jefferson's Ocean's Rye. This is 96 proof. Let's see. Let me get that up there so you guys can see that. There we go. Non-chill filtered, 96 proof. And this is your hot topic segment. This is where I actually want to explore the latest topics out there because I don't watch a lot of television and I don't read a lot of news and do a whole lot of um, partaking of the cultural things out there in the world. But I do spend time sharing with people that I respect, and my niece is one of them. So she and I are always chit chatting over something, and I'll just always ask her, "Hey, what's going on out there? What's the hot topics out there?" And she brought up one regarding comments that Cam Newton has made, and he apparently did an interview where he talks about fathering 8 children. I saw this on YouTube. It was Anton Daniel. He is the content creator, and he was commenting on an interview conducted by Dr. Bryant. Either she's a psychologist or counselor of some type, and she was interviewing Cam Newton about this particular topic, and it was on men fathering multiple children by multiple women, and it was quite interesting. So I'm going to try and see if we can play a little bit of this. I'm not sure how much you'll hear of it, but we're gonna play a little bit, or at least get a piece of it in the comments. And before I do, let me just tell you what I'm sipping on here and what it's about. This Jefferson's Oceans. I love this. So this gives me kind of the aroma of melted caramel, kind of caramelized caramel, meaning it's cooked down a little bit, but it also give me the element of a little wood, on the nose, and but it's not heavy. It actually smells like it's blended very well, and a lot of people don't like that kind of heavy woodiness, but I do because I'm an earthy girl. So, and I get a lot of vanilla coming right off the nose of it, and I give it a real sip here. Okay, that's actually smoother and creamier than I thought. I thought it was going to be with it being a rye. I thought it was going to be a little bit more spicier on my palate and definitely on the finish, but it's not. It's actually it's a little tinge of spiciness, but it gives me kind of some creaminess and some smoothness going down. The company actually, once they've distilled the spirit, the whiskey, they place it in a barrel, and then that barrel is sealed and placed on like ocean liners, and it's sent out to sea. And you hear me talk about the dance that happens inside the barrel between the spirits and the wood. And once that, it's kind of this little motion here going back and forth. And once the wood expands, opens up, it absorbs some of that spirit. And so that spirit is able to kind of grab some of the elements, the flavors from it and the aromas from the wood. And then once that wood contracts, and kind of squeezes it back out and pushes the spirits out. And this happens over and over, back and forth. So can you imagine this being on the ocean where the waves and wakes are kind of bouncing the ship back and forth? The whiskey gets a chance to really engage with the wood even more. And then it's actually picking up some of the elements of the ocean, that kind of that sea-like seaness and saltiness. Doesn't smell like it, for those of you who haven't had it. Doesn't smell salty or it smells like the sea, but it gives you kind of that openness of the sea. So this is a great sipper. I actually love this one. As you can tell by my bottle, it's down there. And I didn't realize how much it was down. Some friends came by and I guess they partook more than I expected. Let me take another sip here. Very, very good. Very good. So this Cam Newton topic, the way that the question was posed to me was, what's more valuable? Is it more important to be able to take care of kids, to provide for them financially, and make sure they got a roof, which is part of being safe, feeling safe, and having a sense of autonomy. And when you know that you're safe, you can explore and gain some independence of what you like and what you don't like without worrying about being harmed? Or is it more valuable to nurture those kids? And it was such a wonderful question. And just watching that interview, I can only respond from this place. For me, and being nearly a 30-year educator, being exposed to children nearly all that time, I recognize the importance of being nurtured, not only from my own experience personally growing up. My father died when I was 8 years old. I'm the youngest of 6 children. The oldest sibling was 17 years my senior, and all the in-betweens. And so I recognize the importance of what nurturing feels like. When we're younger, we don't know it's called nurturing. We only know what it feels like. And it feels like peace. It feels like security. It feels like calmness. It feels like the opportunity to explore and be creative. And when you are nurtured, you don't know that you are being nurtured until you are not nurtured, because there's an element of your safety that's being advanced on, it's being compromised. So I feel like it's more valuable to nurture, because it's that mental and emotional aspect of being a human being that the spirit needs, so that you're connected, you stay connected to that spirit person. And I feel like, although definitely financially, having a safe space is absolutely going to contribute to your autonomy, being able to be nurtured is, to me, more valuable. When students come to school and they are lacking in that area of being nurtured, even if both of their parents are around and available, or around, but they're working and they're unavailable, is what I mean. They come to school looking for that sense of identification of who they are, and being acknowledged as someone who exists because they've been nurtured. Their thoughts, their likes, their dislikes, all that stuff has been nurtured through attention, through conversations, through having their own identity, their own rooms, and things of that sort. And so when they come to school and they don't, or they're lacking in that area, they first, I believe, seek it from their teachers or adults around them, custodian, lunchroom lady. And this is probably the safest they're going to be, because those adults are able to give it to them, when they can, in a safe way. And if they don't get it enough from the adults, depending on the lack of nurturing, the depth of their lack of nurturing, they seek it out through their peers. And what parents need to be aware of is, hopefully they seek it from a peer who has been nurtured and has a nurturing environment that they come from, because then they can share those conversations and they can almost share time with their own family. And your child or that child will get to see and feel what it feels like to be safe and secure, i.e., nurtured. Nurtured in the heart, not necessarily in your material existence. But if they don't find that peer who has a healthy environment where they've been nurtured and given time, they seek it to the next level of peer, and that's the attention getter, the class clown, the one who's trying to get nurtured in all the wrong ways. So, just I want to keep this topic going, because in that, Cam Newton makes a comment in that video that he feared marriage more, but he wanted God to help keep blessing him with more kids. And I'm thinking, well, damn, just go keep having sex, I guess. And so you ain't got to worry about God blessing you. It's going to happen. That's a biology. But this idea of him being fearful, the creator, the content creator, Mr. Daniels, made a comment in that he says that a lot of men, he feels, a lot of men fear marriage because they think they're going to lose their stuff. Now, I didn't say it, but it was a thought that I never thought about. I guess, how could I? But anyway, yes, I digress. A lot of men fear losing their stuff. When you get married, the law says 50% automatically, blah, blah, blah. And I think I want to explore this a little bit more. I want to go and dig deeper to see if there's conversations from a Nick Cannon or a Cam Newton or many of others with money who may have expounded on this topic of marriage to see if Mr. Anton Daniel is onto something, that possibly men fear marriage and commitment because they think they're going to lose their things, their stuff. And I don't mean their reproductive stuff. I mean their material stuff. So, anyways, that's the hot topics for today. Sipped all of that. So let me just go over to my single malt baller and let me take a sip on this one. Thank you once again. Hit that like, hit the subscribe button, and let me hear your comments on this hot topic. Definitely let me know what you think. Cheers. Beyond the Bottle. This is where I answer listener submitted questions ranging from anything about bourbon or whiskey or distillation or broader topics having to do with education, history, anything. And this is where you, the listener, can submit your questions to me, and I will collaborate with you to explore the curiosities around that question and try to get them answered. So, this is a question that was submitted to me, and it was pretty much a great leading question for this segment, this being the second episode of Beyond Cocktails. So I think this was right on point. And this was submitted by a listener that asked, what is the difference between whiskey and bourbon? Great question. Even though the terms are kind of used interchangeably a lot, in my tastings, I always give this analogy to help people understand that all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon. What I want you to do is close your eyes, and I want you to imagine an umbrella. The umbrella itself is whiskey, but the spokes inside the umbrella that kind of keep it at an arch are different types of whiskey. So there's Scotch whiskey, Irish whiskey, Japanese whiskey, American whiskey, Canadian whiskey. Those are all different spokes or metal rods that keep that umbrella erect and keep it covering you. So, with that, there are some specific nuances that can help you understand the differences between whiskey and bourbon. Whiskey can be distilled, and it's basically made from different fermented grains. And it can be a combination of barley, rye, wheat, any kind of grain, and it's aged in a barrel. And it's usually an oak barrel, but it can be any kind of barrel. Well, in contrast to that, bourbon has to have a dominant grain source, and that dominant grain is corn. So 51% of the grains that go into producing bourbon have to be corn because there are some strict legal requirements that allow a distiller to put that stamp, that name bourbon on it. And one is it has to be produced from a dominant grain of corn. It can have others like rye and wheat and barley in it as well, but the majority of the grain recipe, we call that recipe a mash bill, Bill. The majority of the recipe has to be corn. The other thing is bourbon, once placed in a barrel, the barrel has to be a brand new white American oak barrel. That means that the barrel itself can only be made from an American oak tree, not red oak, but white oak. And that barrel has to be brand new, could have never been used before by any other spirits for any reason. The other stipulation is that bourbon has to be produced in the United States. That same process of cooking the grains, adding some enzymes and some yeast, and allowing the fermentation to happen and vaporize. Then those vapors are cooled down, and that cooling down produces a liquefied distillate, and that point is bourbon. Well, that process can happen in Zimbabwe, but they can't call it bourbon. It can only be called bourbon if it's produced in the United States, and not just Kentucky, but anywhere in the United States. It has to be distilled no higher than 160 proof. But once it's distilled, it has to be proofed down, usually simply by water, and it cannot enter the bottle no more than 125 proof. So just a couple little simple facts that help you determine the difference in bourbon and whiskey. And when you notice the labels in the store, you'll see bourbon whiskey. You'll know that that was produced in the United States. If you see just the word whiskey, by the way, I left out one. There's also Tennessee whiskey. It is produced in the United States, but it goes through just a slightly different process. Bourbon, you can't add anything else to it. No coloring, no flavors, no nothing. You just got to let the barrel do what it does with the distillate, and that's it. With Tennessee whiskey, they go through that same process. You won't see the word bourbon on there. You'll see whiskey, and most of the time Tennessee, but they filter their spirits to clean the impurities out of it even more, out of the waters that they use. They filtered over activated charcoal, maple filtered charcoal for that part, and that's called the Lincoln County process. That only happens when you're making Tennessee whiskey, so to speak. That's our Beyond the Bottle. Thank you for submitting your questions, and I would love to hear more about any topic. This keeps me abreast on what's going on, and it also keeps me alive. So I say, let's go beyond the bottle even more. Cheers. To our listeners, I encourage you to take a moment and reflect on the lessons you've learned and to share your own experiences with those around you. And until next time, this is Tasha, wishing you good pours and even better conversations. Cheers.